For years, people have talked about something called the Epstein Files, but most people don't actually know what those files are, what's inside them, or what they really prove. These files are connected to Jeffrey Epstein, an American financier who became wealthy in the 1980s. His source of wealth was never fully explained. What is established is that for years, Epstein sexually abused and trafficked underage girls, often with the help of his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted in 2021 and is currently serving a 20-year federal prison sentence. In 2005, police in Florida began investigating Epstein after complaints from the parents of a 14-year-old girl. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to state charges related to soliciting a minor. Despite the seriousness of the crimes, he received a secret plea deal, 13 months in jail with work release for most of the sentence. The victims were never informed of this deal. This outcome was widely criticized and became the first major reason the public believed Epstein was being protected by the system. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested again, this time on federal sex trafficking charges. He was facing the possibility of life in prison. 1 month later, on the 10th of August 2019, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell in New York. After his death, multiple investigations were conducted. The Department of Justice Inspector General ruled his death a suicide, citing extreme failures in jail supervision. His death meant no trial, no testimony, no cross-examination, and no public exposure of his full network. The term Epstein Files does not refer to a single document. It refers to millions of pages of material collected over decades related to investigations into Jeffrey Epstein. These materials include FBI reports and interview summaries, Department of Justice investigative records, emails and correspondence, financial documents, travel logs, photos and videos, and court filings from civil lawsuits. Much of this material came from federal investigations, the criminal case against Ghislaine Maxwell, and civil lawsuits filed by victims, including Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre was one of the most prominent victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring. She said she was recruited at just 16 years old. She testified under oath that Ghislaine Maxwell groomed her, trained her, and trafficked her to Jeffrey Epstein and others. In her memoir, Virginia Giuffre stated that she was brutally beaten and raped by an unidentified prime minister and that she feared she might die a sex slave. Because of her lawsuits, thousands of Epstein-related documents were forced into the public record. Her testimony helped lead to Epstein's 2019 arrest and Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction in 2021. Without Virginia Giuffre, much of this case would still be hidden. In November 2025, the U.S. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bipartisan law requiring the Department of Justice to release Epstein-related records for public transparency. The Department of Justice identified over 6 million pages, images, and videos as potentially responsive. However, due to legal review, redactions, and victim protection requirements, not all materials were released. On the 30th of January 2026, the Department of Justice released the largest and likely final major batch of Epstein files. The announcement was made by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who oversaw the entire process. He stated 3 key points. The release fulfilled the law's requirements. The White House had no role in vetting the files, and the materials include unverified and even false submissions such as anonymous FBI tips. He also stated that this release marked the end of major disclosures. So the question is, what was released? Over 3 million additional pages, more than 2,000 videos, and approximately 180,000 images. Combined with earlier releases, the total public material reached nearly 3.5 million pages out of an estimated 6 million items. All of it is hosted on the official Department of Justice website and is searchable. Not everything was released. Tens of thousands of pages were withheld or heavily redacted because they contained child sexual abuse material, identifying details of victims, medical records, or graphic imagery. Now let's talk about what's actually inside the files. The documents include emails showing Epstein continued networking with powerful people after his 2008 conviction, FBI interview summaries known as 302 reports, many of which explicitly state that allegations were unverified, financial records including accounts tied to Ghislaine Maxwell, photos and videos from Epstein's properties, psychological evaluations and prison records related to Epstein's death, and thousands of public submitted tips including anonymous claims, some of which were later deemed false or unsubstantiated. One of the most talked about aspects of the files is the names. Hundreds of well-known figures appear across emails, contacts, or reports. Names appear for many reasons: social contact, emails, travel, third-party mentions, or unverified tips. But this is critical to understand that being named does not mean guilt. The DOJ has explicitly stated that many of these allegations, including several involving high-profile figures, are unfounded or uncorroborated. They are included for transparency, not validation. Some of the most discussed names include Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Howard Lutnick, Steve Bannon, Richard Branson, Kathy Rumler, Sergey Brin, and many others. For most of these individuals, no criminal charges resulted, and many strongly denied wrongdoing. Anyway, one thing was proven in court. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted in 2021 of recruiting, grooming, and facilitating the abuse of underage girls. She is currently serving a 20-year federal prison sentence. Her conviction remains the strongest confirmed legal outcome in the entire case, but public outrage remains. Because Epstein never stood trial, no client list was produced, no broader prosecutions followed, and many documents remain redacted. For many victims, justice feels incomplete. What we know for certain that Epstein trafficked minors, Maxwell enabled and facilitated abuse. Powerful people were socially connected to Epstein. Victims were ignored for years, and justice ended prematurely. What remains unknown is who financed Epstein, whether others directly participated in crimes, and why. Certain evidence remains sealed, why prosecutions stopped, whether the full truth will ever be released, and most importantly, the sudden death of Epstein inside a jail cell. The Epstein files are not the end of the story. They are a record of what was exposed and a reminder of what was never answered. And for the victims whose lives were destroyed, those unanswered questions are the deepest injustice of all.